going to call the York County Council meeting to order. Councilmember Robert Winkler will give the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to get together this evening and do the people's business, Lord. Just thank you for the beautiful weather today. I would like to see a little rain, but ask for wisdom for us as we try to get through the evening's business. Just give us the wisdom to make the best decisions for the citizens of York County. Thank you for all the many blessings you give us every day. Give us all safe travels as we go home. It's in your name we ask. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oath of office, would Faith Funderburk and Keith Martins please come forward?
There's no way he knew about that.
Thank you for serving.
There are no appearances. Has anyone signed up for the public forum? No one will do that. Are there any items any member would like removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Public hearing. Council to hold a public hearing and consider second reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 153, Planning and Development, to clarify the definition of retiree housing. Is there anyone here against? Is there anyone here in favor?
Move to close. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. A motion for second reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Council to hold a public hearing and consider second reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155, Zoning Code, to clarify the definition of landfill and its sub-definitions, to address accessory processing uses, to amend regulatory provisions related thereto, to amend the table of permitted and special exception uses to remove redundant use types, and to provide for contextual and clerical amendments related thereto. Is anyone here who wants to speak against? Anyone in favor?
Move to close. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion passes. Is there a motion for the second reading?
Move to approve. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion passes. Council to hold a public hearing and consider second reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155 Zoning Code, Sections 155.010, 155.021, 155.022, 155.036, 155.037, 155.046, 155.047, 155.061 and 155.062, so as to reclassify certain uses that are currently allowed by right to a use that requires a special exception from the Zoning Board of Appeals, to remove the use single-family detached housing development from the AGC and RUD zoning districts, to clarify the parking requirements for event centers in the agricultural, conservation, and rural residential districts, to provide for a public hearing and to provide for other matters related thereto. Is anyone here against? Anyone in favor?
Move to
Move.
close.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Second reading motion.
Move to approve second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion passes. Council to hold a public hearing and consider first reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 154 Subdivision Code and Chapter 155 Zoning Code, so as to distinctly define major subdivisions and minor subdivisions, to amend regulatory provisions related thereto, to establish exemptions and exemption standards from such regulatory provisions, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Is there anyone who would like to speak against?
Good evening. My name's Tim Heline. I'm at 1830 Hands Mill Highway, Rock Hill. Appreciate your time. I was gone last week and I got a call from a couple folks about this, and a concern that I have is on the major and the minor subdivision part. And I've heard the number thrown out that over 4 lots, it'll have to go to a major subdivision with buffer zones, green space, interior roads, and I agree with a lot of that in certain areas of the county. But, you know, all of you in here have different areas. Your geographic area is all different. It's just like kids. I've got 4 children. They all come out of the same womb, and they're all 4 the same, but they're all 4 different in their personalities and whatnot. And, you know, Robert Christie and Bump's land and part of Britt's is way different than yours and Allison's and Joel, sorry about that, Joel. And I think with, you know, growth is here at York County. The spillover from Charlotte, with what York County's doing, attracting businesses, the whole Panther thing is gonna change our landscape. And I just think that it seems like that pendulum, they're taking it from just one side and swinging it so far left. And then if that number truly is 5 or over 4 lots that you have to go to that, I think that's moving pretty fast. And you know, county north of us and county south of us, they do it a little different. I think once you hit that 10 and over, that's when you go into that major subdivision. I think if we looked at something like that or had that number higher than 5, when you look at the cost of land, the road expense at $2 or $250 a foot to put a road in. If you put 20% in green space and you've got your buffers and your right of way, on 10 acres of land, it would be very hard to get 5 lots. And you have a lot of zoning spots where there are 10, 20 acres that would fit to put a road in, but it's gonna be too cost prohibitive for the end user. If a person has to go by all those rules, you have so much dead space with that road, that buffer zone, your green space, and I'm concerned about that for the future, because there are areas where you look at Adna Church, Eastview, Terza, just down that away. I think that's where a lot of that, in my little area, that's where that growth is gonna go, and I'm just concerned about that. Not everybody wants to live in a quarter-acre HOA subdivision. Again, I think 5 lots is too low. One size doesn't fit all. It seems like, and I don't know the nuts and bolts of this ordinance or the changes, but it just seems like there's a push to stop growth or to stop housing on major subdivisions and even minor ones. It's it's getting a lot harder, and I don't know if that's really a goal or not, but to me, you know, I look, I mean, how many new subdivisions from scratch have been approved by council and by staff and by planning, and like, just in the last 12 months? I don't think too many, but we got these businesses coming. Charlotte just announced, you know, Lowe's is building a 150,000 square foot warehouse. That's gonna bring people. I read where they have another, is it Honeywell coming in, gonna be way above average jobs. Those people aren't gonna live in Charlotte. They're gonna come down to York County. We've got all these businesses at Yard Tract and the industrial park right there at the end of Museum Road. I forget whose land that is, but that's gonna bring jobs, and we need the houses. And these businesses coming, they gotta be able to see houses, and I just think we're moving fast on that, from minor subdivision to major, and I would really like to see it at 10, right around there, and also have a committee. I mean, I would love to get with a couple of people and get with some staff members and some council members and just talk about it more, because if you make that change now, you'll never undo it. If you went to 10 and it's not working out, or you're unhappy with what's going on, it's easier to go make it tighter than loosen up. It'll never get loosened up once you do that. And I think it's truly gonna have an effect. When you look at the impact fees of the school districts, which I get that, Clover's is most likely gonna get passed if you ask me. I think York's gonna be right behind that if you ask me, and I get that. But we start stacking all that expenses, all that stuff up, it's just gonna I think it's really gonna hamper growth big time. It's gonna increase the cost of lots big time. We need housing to attract businesses. Again, I said that. And a workshop would be great for staff and stakeholders. And that's about it. I hope you can consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else against? Is anyone in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion passes. Is there a motion on first reading?
Motion to approve. Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Oh, Robert said yes first.
Well, you want, actually, Allison, you made the motion.
No,
All right.
no.
Then Mr. Winkler.
All right. I'll just say, you know, I agree with, you know, there's different problems in different areas. That's why we're working on small area plans and stuff right now. I do have, and I when we first started talking about changing this, I had some questions, and wish I'd have thought of it when I was speaking with Mr. Hudspeth about something else today, but I didn't. But before second reading, I would like to talk a little bit more about that. To me, in my mind, a major subdivision's not 5 houses. And that's what we're defining it as. And so I'd like to talk a little bit more about why we came up with that number and that kind of thing. So I'm going to support it on second reading, but I do have some questions. So
First reading.
Dr.
first reading,
Blackwell.
excuse me. Yeah.
So when we first started talking about this, seemed a long time ago, 6 months ago, whenever it was. Well, before I say anything else, David, what was the logic in going down to 5 lots for major?
5 lots is what we currently define as a subdivision that has to go to council. We made some changes that clarified some things, and we just chose to go with the same definition we have now. It is consistent with what a lot of places define as a subdivision, and I think of it more as a minor subdivision. It's not so much that these are major, it's that what a minor subdivision does not require planning commission approval, does not require buffers and open space and things of that sort. And we have those come through as a minor subdivision are much easier to approve.
So
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
5 lots would be considered a subdivision that does have to comply with the standards that we place on
20%
all.
green space?
Yes, sir.
So, you know, my concern is, I think it's going to be kind of detrimental to the rural areas. I think it may harm smaller developers, and hopefully everybody can understand me, I'm kind of getting over a sinus infection. But, you know, we've had kind of a change in the planning commission. It's gone from pro-knowledge, pro-developer, a lot of developers on there know the business, to kind of an anti-development, anti-developer majority. And that, with the humongous changes in staffing we've had in the planning department, which a lot of them probably don't have any business, real-world experience versus just the government experience. And then the requirements of a major subdivision, I just feel like, you know, a lot of counties go by that 10, 11, I guess over 10. So I'm not going to support this on first reading because I think it's just getting too much of a burden to the smaller developers and the ones that can just have a few homes out in a rural area. They can't afford to be putting a big subdivision in, like a big group coming in, like some of the big groups, and, you know, have hundreds of homes and all that. So because of that, I'm not going to support this.
Anyone else? Ms. Cox?
I second in the motion, and I support staff's attempt to address this concern. I do have questions myself. I'm actually very surprised to see that there is not much objection from the developers and the builders, and I know that our planning commission passed this. I believe it was 7-1, which is a pretty. I disagree with Dr. Blackwell and his assessment that there aren't folks on there who are able to evaluate the pros and cons, and so actually some of the folks that typically side with developers actually voted and said this was appropriate. But I agree with Robert. I mean, I do have some questions, especially for folks in my district, to make sure that we're not hamstringing them and lumping everyone into one group when clearly there are differences that need to be recognized within the district. So I don't know if we have a workshop that isn't already agenda slated out, but since this has been such a long time since we talked about it, I really wish that we could have more input from staff and explanation as to why we have to go this route, what the benefits are, before we get to third reading, certainly. But I will support first reading.
I'm sort of in the same boat as Robert and Christie. I have some questions about the choice of the number, because to me, you know, a 5-lot subdivision doesn't necessarily get to the level of a major, and I live in Riverwalk. That's a large subdivision. Up the road to Baxter, to me, that's a large subdivision. The intent of this, as I understand going back, was to help prevent some of the piano key type development in some of our more rural areas, but on higher traveled roads. So I appreciate the intent of it, but I don't necessarily agree that all the divisions and development that will be caught up in this works out to be to the benefit of the county. So I'll support it at first reading, but I do think we need to discuss it a little bit more at workshop, maybe work through pros and cons of what that number is, and hopefully we can reach an agreement that makes sense.
We will discuss workshop, but I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none.
No.
Oh, one. Motion passes. There's no old business. New business. Council to approve adopting a proclamation proclaiming the week of October 23 through 31 as Red Ribbon Week.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Sir, could you read that into the record, please?
If I had it, I would read it. I don't have it on me right this second.
I thought that was required, Mr.
But if we'd pass it to Dr. Blackwell, he appears ready to
I
read.
got that voice
Yeah.
problem, I couldn't read it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none. Motion passes. Council to consider purchase of computers for council and/or staff in council chambers.
Well, I'm the one that brought this up, so I'll make a motion to support.
Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Council to approve the renewal of a maintenance agreement for computer software with the South Carolina Judicial Department for a total amount of $75,000. There's a motion to defer. Second. That motion, the clerk's office asked us to defer that. That is why we will defer that until the clerk's office is ready to move forward. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion passes. Council to ratify and approve volunteer firefighter workers' compensation insurance with Corel Insurance in the amount of $82,682.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Council to ratify the emergency procurement of landscaping services for York County government properties.
Move to approve.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion is approved. Council to approve a resolution committing York County to enter into a fee in lieu of tax and incentive agreement with a company presently identified under the code name Project NMF and other matters related thereto.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Winkler?
I believe this was discussed in our Economic Development Committee. And the reason this is not normally a resolution committing us to a fee is just a consent agenda thing. But in negotiations, I believe the numbers that were presented to Economic Development changed slightly to what this is, and that's why it was brought up this way instead of in consent agenda. So.
Understand. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion, no. 5-1, motion passes. Council to approve change order number 1 with J.M. Cope, Inc. in the amount of $160,000 for bid alternate number 2, Heckle Complex renovations.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a first and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Committee and other reports. Dr. Blackwell, the chairman of the Justice and Public Safety Committee meeting.
We had a meeting Monday, September 23rd. One item was the fireboat needs for Lake Wiley that's been tossed about for 10 or 15 years. Newport has elected to take that on with their tax board. So essentially, and this is still being discussed and worked out, but we asked for it to come to the full council. But essentially, I guess we would maybe consider offering to pay the maintenance fees and the fuel, $7,000 or so a year. But just to provide the coverage on lake homes like we provide for all the rural properties or wherever else in the unincorporated area of the county. And we'd be looking at around $350,000 for a fireboat versus the normal $500,000 for a fire truck. Also, there was some concern about the retirement money being used for pay per call and whether that was appropriate based on our ordinance. And the attorney's going to look into that further. And there was also discussion about some of the fire districts being limited in their referendum amount. I mean, not referendum, but their millage amount. And they'd like to maybe consider having a referendum to raise that amount. David Jennings was one of the people that brought that forward, which requires a new tax board formation if that should occur. And that was it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any new council member, new non-agenda comments? Excellent. Citizen concerns.
Nobody signed up.
Executive session.
Yes, sir. Make a motion, we go into executive session for contractual matter involving Project Avalanche, receipt of legal advice on a contractual matter with Hartman Incorporated waiver request, and receipt of legal advice on Mac Estates update.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing none. We are in executive session. We will go straight into executive session. Council is back in session. There are no motions or no action need to be taken following executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.